Hey guys.
Grant, good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to edit your face onto the visual after the show so that people can see you. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Grant Pennell. I'm currently living in Toronto. I'm originally from Winnipeg, and my author name is Grant Douglas Pennell. I just include the middle name to sound a little more formal. I've played hockey all my life, and kind of a COVID project, I decided to start writing a hockey book, and I did one in the 72 Summit Series. And it turned out really good. It got great reviews, so I decided to write the second book, which is called Skating with Goats, and I just released that one in December.
Awesome. It's fascinating because, we always see social media pundits talking about who's, the GOAT. And that seems to be a common expression used in all sports right now, especially basketball. But how did you come up with all your measurements for, deciding who goes where?
Yeah, it's funny because, I go on social media all the time. I'm on Facebook. I like to argue. So I'm sitting there on, on the hockey forums, and always people are always saying, oh, Gordie Howe the GOAT, or Bobby Orr, or Wayne Gretzky. And I'm always the guy in the forum who's like, yeah, but what are you basing it on? It's not just like your favorite player. It's got to be some sort of qualification to make the statement. So that was always in the back of my head. And then when I'm trying to write figure out a topic for a second book, I have a 20-year-old son who's big into basketball. And he's like, why don't you talk about the GOATs of the game? Because like you just said, all the young people are talking about GOATs all the time. So he was playing this PlayStation, and he was playing NBA, and I was looking at one of the players, and I'm like, how do you pick your players? And he's like, oh, they're all broken down into like skills, legacy, all the different things on a score of 100. And the little light bulb went off on top of my head. And I thought, okay, I need to do something like that for hockey. I need to be able to create some sort of way of analyzing who the best players of all time are. So that kind of started the whole process, and then do it as a system out of 100. So I stole it from PlayStation, but I created it myself for hockey. So what I broke it down to was 40% would be skill. And of the 40, 20% of that is skating, 10% is stick handling, shooting and passing, that kind of skills, and then the other 10% is offensive and defensive play. So that would be 40. And then I added 30 points for legacy. And for me, the legacy was, did they leave an impact on the game? Did they change the game? Did they win awards? Did they, I'm not a huge guy in the Stanley Cup because it's a bit of a, you'd be in the right place at the right time. Plus, also the original six had a distinct advantage. There's only 6 teams, only 2 or 3 of them could win. So I really can't compare, John Beliveau's 10 Stanley Cups to, someone who's, Marcel Dion who never won one. So I didn't use Stanley Cups as much, but I did use things like most valuable player, Conn Smythe, Norris trophies. Like, did they really leave an impact when they played? So that was 30%. And then the last 2 categories are 20% for stats. And the stats I was tried to be fair again. Like the original 6 played in a much tighter game. They only scored 3 or 4 goals per game for both teams compared to the 80s where, Gretzky's Oilers were racking up 7-8 point goals per game compared to the dead puck area where again numbers went down. So I tried to compare all those. I added WHA stats in at a .70 ratio. So if someone scored 50 goals in the WHA, it would be worth 35 goals in the AHL kind of thing. So I used stats for 20%, and then the last 10% was what I called intangibles. Were they leaders? Were they popular players? Did they leave, a lot of charity work? Just trying to add that last 10% to the thing. So I had a score of 100. And then I had a kind of a fantasy training camp in my head, going through all the different players in history. I invited them all to my training camp and decided to make my cuts. And that was probably the hardest thing, was to go through all these different players, rate them, and then decide who would be on the team. And then I put them in lines and defense partners and 3 goaltenders. So total hockey nerd stuff. But it was fun.
Yeah, I love it. So can you give us a little teaser with your top 5 or?
Sure. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. But I put Gretzky with Gordie Howe and Ovechkin on the first line. And then my defense partners were Orr with Nick Lidstrom. So, and the reason I did it was I just figured, not only are they 5 of the greatest players, but I just figured Gretzky's passing to Ovechkin with that one-timer. I mean, he'd score 100 goals in the season. And, Gordie Howe was there, great player, but also, physical presence if anybody wanted to mess with Gretzky. And he was also Gretzky's idol, so I think there's a lot of motivation there. And then, to me, Orr and Lidstrom were perfect. Lidstrom, would be the guy to stay at home, make all the perfect plays while Orr was flying all over the ice. So I just think it's, a great starting 5.
And what about the goalie?
I have 3 other lines. What's that?
What about the goalie? Did you bring in the goalies at all?
The starting goalie is Dominik Hasek.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We've got 2 pro goalies here. So do you guys agree with that?
He left me off his list. I'm kind of disappointed.
My logic, but I was and I'm not a goalie guy, but I mean I played defense all my life. But as I started going through the goalie stuff, he just kept winning almost every category, and never played in Detroit for a little bit, was a good team. I mean, dudes, he did it on Buffalo.
It's interesting you say that. You're making an old friend of mine real happy, because I would have this argument with him often. Like he put Dominator as number 1 all time, and I was like, come on, man. Like, you have Patrick Waugh, you have Brodeur, you have Tretiak, you have all these, and it was just, I mean, hey, I'm a Dominator fan too, except when he beat us in the Olympics or whatever. But yeah, like, I mean, so no, that's interesting that you say that, but no, he
I'm actually wearing a Tretiak jersey.
Awesome. Right on.
But no, I didn't, and that's the other thing. I didn't include anybody international hockey, and I didn't include anybody from 1943 before then. And the reason is, first of all, there's no video footage of Harry Morenz or anybody really, so I didn't think it was fair I couldn't analyze them. But secondly, before 1929, there was no forward passing, so I mean the game was completely different. And then in 1943, they added a red line, which allowed teams to pass over their blue line and kind of made modern hockey. So that was kind of the reason why. And then the international hockey, even though I wrote a book on international hockey, I just didn't think it was fair to compare players who never played in the NHL with NHL players.
So who's surprised you on your list? Like, who surprised you, either how high they ranked or how low they ranked?
I think probably the biggest surprise was, I would say Bobby Hull. Even though I grew up in Winnipeg and I watched him play, I didn't realize his dominance in the 60s. Like, he would win goal-scoring titles, with 58 goals, which was a record, and then the next person might have like 38 goals. So his domination over his peers was significant, kind of thing. And then, able to play, at a real high level right until almost 40 years old. I knew it growing up. I didn't really realize how great he was in Chicago. And then looking at all the clips, I mean, he could just fly and great hockey sense. And I actually realized he was probably a much better player than his son, who was obviously just a great goal scorer. But I mean, Bobby, I think, is underrated historically for his talent. But I had to rate him low because he was such a not a great person. So, in the legacy, I left that lower, and the intangibles lower because, of all the problems that came with him.
Cool. Right on.
Interesting.
And then there's one more surprise, but I'm not going to tell you because it's a goaltender. And, I don't want to start the whole thing.
No, that's fine. I don't want to have to try and reach through the screen or anything. That's
so Grant is from Waterloo, so it's after midnight out there, so we'll put you to bed now. But one last message to our fans, and anything you might want to tell them about buying this book.
Yeah, so I put little things called Skating with Goats. It's a little goat there flying on the ice. It's available on Amazon. I've just released it in December, and if you like reading about hockey and the players, I have almost 500 pages of kind of nerd delight for hockey stuff, and I pick 4 lines, 8 defensemen, 3 goalies, and then I talk about the players I cut. And I actually even included some make-believe teams that they would play against, like all-time team Russia, all-time team Scandinavia. So I think it's just a fun book for hockey people, and I think, some cottage reading that's nothing too heavy and something that everybody can enjoy.
Right on.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot, Grant.
Great.
Have a
All
great
right,
night.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, Grant.
You too. Take care.